Hey guys, it's Abby. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you 20 terrifying TikToks. I really feel like there's something in the water recently because the TikToks I've been coming across keep getting crazier and crazier. But I'd say it is perfect timing now that spooky season is among us, and I am very, very excited for upcoming Halloween videos. But if you guys like this video, please be sure to give it a big thumbs up, click the subscribe button down below, and turn on post notifications so you never miss a video. I post every Sunday and sometimes Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Without further ado, let's just get right on into the video. Our first two TikToks are by the user Lois Lane. She shares a story about a time her boyfriend went out with his friends to a cemetery and had a terrifying experience with a little girl. She explains that she grew up in a small town and it was normal for people to go to cemeteries to scare themselves and have a good time. She says that one night her boyfriend and his friends decided to go out to this one cemetery. They went out there with the intention of playing four corners in the cemetery. On the way there, they had to pass a farmhouse, and this guy takes trespassers to the cemetery very seriously. So as they drove past his house, they had to keep their lights off on this gravel road until they were past his line of sight. When they turned their headlights back on, the driver was terrified. And then all of a sudden, the car just shut off completely. After a while, they were able to finally get the car back on, and they immediately turned around and went back home. They didn't even make it to the cemetery. And the driver finally explained to them what he saw. He said he saw a little girl standing in front of the car just before the lights went out and the car stopped working. When they got home, none of his friends believed him, but when they got home, they realized on the front of the hood there were two little handprints in the dirt from the gravel road.
I have a terrifying ghost story to tell you. And if you're new here, hi. I've talked about the cemetery before on my page, and it's safe to say that the stories about this place keep rolling in because it is so haunted. Before I begin, I get a lot of comments saying, why do you guys visit cemeteries? Why do you guys not do normal kid things, etc., etc.? Up until recently, my town has been very small. And when I was 16, there wasn't really anything to do here because we're surrounded by cornfields. So what do? We visit every haunted place in our little city, which is a lot. And this cemetery in particular was very popular. And I know that doesn't apply to everyone because I know I'm gonna get a comment saying I've lived in a small town my whole life and I've never done that. I didn't either. However, a large majority of my graduating class in high school and a large majority of my boyfriend's graduating class in high school have visited this cemetery before. So let's get into it. The year is 2016 and my boyfriend and his three friends decide to take his friend's mom's brand new 2016 vehicle to the cemetery. And it's important to note, when getting to the cemetery, you have to drive on a big old gravel road and turn onto another gravel road where you have to shut your headlights off to pass by the farmer who looks over the cemetery's house. But once you make your way more towards the cemetery, you're able to turn your headlights back on because he can't see them. And it's also important to note that this isn't just a flat piece of land with a bunch of headstones on it. This is an actual gated, small cemetery. So by the time my boyfriend and his friends get there, it is 2 o'clock in the morning. And that's important because they were waiting for 3 o'clock in the morning to play this game in my small town called Four Corners, which is where, you guessed it, you touch all 4 corners of the cemetery and supposedly things start happening. So the headlights are on, the radio's up, they're talking to each other, laughing, giggling, doing whatever, when all of a sudden their friend who's driving his mom's car starts looking out of the windshield and squinting. He then says, "Oh my God." And right as he says that, the car dies. So then everyone starts freaking out because it's pitch black darkness out there in the middle of nowhere at a haunted cemetery and a brand new car just died. It takes them 3 tries to get this car started again. And when it does start, his friend locks the door, puts it in reverse, and gets out of there. And they're asking the kid driving, what's going on? What happened? What did you see? Because his face is pale. So while they're driving back, this kid says, "I saw a little girl walking in front of my headlights, and by the time I knew exactly what it was walking in front of my headlights, the car died." And nobody believed him until they got back to that kid's house, where they saw on the hood 2 little handprints. And if you've never driven on a gravel road before, this is why it's so scary. When you drive, day, night, whatever, dust accumulates on your car from your tires spinning in the gravel, which means the handprints that were on the car were fresh. And before I get this question in the comments and etc., none of them had little sisters or little siblings at all at the time. And there was no way that the positioning of the hands would have been possible because there were no other marks on the car except the handprints. So I don't know what the hell that was, but I do know that that cemetery is now not available to 16-year-olds now. That place is chained up, padlocked, and has cameras everywhere, so people can't go in. And I know that because I tried going 2 summers ago, and I wasn't able to get in, but I did see something. But anyways, that's going to do it for me. Stay tuned for another ghost story this week.
Okay, so this is honestly crazy. I feel like Did we all have an obsession with like ghost stuff and going to cemeteries and playing the Ouija board when we were kids? Because it really seems that way, although I apparently have never grown out of it. Don't play the Ouija board though. That's where I draw the line. But what this reminds me of, honestly, is like back in the day when there was like a trend on YouTube to be doing the 3 a.m. challenges, and people are like on dirt roads, like blinking their lights and like throwing like coins over bridges to see if like someone would appear. That's what it's reminding me of. And honestly, I wonder if like people went back, they could replicate that scenario. I think it's like really important that she mentioned that they were on a gravel road, so the dirt was like fresh that the handprints were in. And the fact that none of them had any younger siblings that could have made those handprints, and that there were no other marks, you'd think if there was like a kid trying to get up on the hood of a car, there'd be like smudge marks. But no, it's like, I'm picturing like a little girl like just levitating and like putting her hands on the car, which I think makes this a lot scarier. I guess if you have nothing to do in a small town, that is one way to keep yourself entertained. I'm sure they will never forget that night. In the second TikTok from this user, she shares an experience. She is away at a golf tournament and she is sharing a room with one of her friends. She says this night she was just tossing and turning and could not sleep. And every time she woke up, she felt like there was someone staring at her from the hotel room door. All night long, it just felt like there were eyes on her back. When she woke up in the morning and she shared this with her roommate said that she felt the exact same way. Normally she sleeps so well, but that night she kept waking up and she had to move to the point where she couldn't see the door or the closet because she felt like someone was in the room with them.
Let's talk about another terrifying experience I've had. If you're new here, hi. I usually talk about some pretty scary stuff, and today I'm going to be talking about something that happened to me while I was away at a golf tournament. If you don't know this about me, you do now. I golfed in college, and a lot of the time when I would go to these tournaments, we would have to travel overnight to hotels. And 99.9% of the time, I would share a room with my best friend from school. So we're getting ready for a competition, so we're obviously going to bed early, we're getting ready. I lay in bed, and another thing to note about me, I have terrible insomnia, or I used to have really bad insomnia, to the point where my friend used to make fun of me and say, "You're awake every single time I wake up in the middle of the night." So in order to understand the story, you have to understand the way that the hotel room was set up. It was a nice hotel, number one. You walk in through the door, and straight away to your right is the bathroom that you can walk into, shower, toilet, whatever. And the shared wall to that bathroom was my best friend's bed, and then my bed, and then the TV, and there was like a coat closet right to the left when you walk in. So me and my friend, we went to bed pretty early, and I just remember I could not sleep for the love of me, like a lot worse than it normally is. And I specifically remember every time I woke up, I would have to turn away from the door because I felt like someone was watching me in the corner of the coat closet. And I woke up maybe 20 times that night. I'm not exaggerating. And every single time I would feel like there was these pair of eyes just beaming into the side of my head or my back if I was turned away from the door. I also remember waking up in the middle of the night and seeing the bathroom light on because my friend was using the restroom, and I looked at the clock and it said 3 a.m. And the rest of the night I just was tossing and turning and I could not fall fully back asleep. So when we woke up, we were getting ready, we were putting our polos on, skirts on, putting our hair up, stuff like that. And I remember not telling her because I didn't want to freak her out, and I just chalked it up to anxiety. And I never really sleep well in hotels anyways because I'm too nervous. But as we're getting ready, she's asking me the same questions she asks me at every tournament, and one of them is, how did you sleep? And I was honest, and I was like, I actually woke up pretty much the entire night. And I remember including a lot worse than it normally is. And she stopped what she was doing and she goes, it's so weird because I never wake up, and I woke up 3 or 4 times last night. And being her tournament roommate, I essentially was like, yeah, you don't really wake up unless you have to use the bathroom, which is the only time I did see her up. And then she said it was so bad that I kept waking up because every time I woke up, I felt like there was someone in the room with us. And after she said that, she said, I could have sworn there was someone right here, and turned and pointed at the coat closet. And immediately I go, you're lying, because that is why I couldn't sleep. I felt like someone was watching me in my bed. And she goes, yeah, it was so bad I had to move to the other side of the bed so I couldn't see the coat closet. And one thing to note about this particular friend that I have, she is not super into like the whole paranormal thing and like experiencing things. So for her to openly say, I felt like someone was there, was super alarming to me. But anyways, we left for the day, and I forgot about what hotel that was, but it pops in my mind every now and then, and every time it does, I text her. But that's gonna do it for me. Stay tuned for more ghost stories.
It's always such a scary experience when someone else is seeing or feeling the exact same thing you are, so it's just not in your head. I really wonder what like the history of this specific hotel was, and if other people have experienced this too. I mean, like, what are the odds that both of them felt this like weird thing staring at them in the middle of the night? I've stayed at quite a few hotels and I have never had that experience before. Even I stayed at the Roosevelt Hotel, and while I had a hard time falling asleep, it was mostly because of my own thoughts, not because anything really actually was happening to me at that point in time. That being said, I knew it was a haunted hotel, so that'd be pretty frightening when you go to what appears to be a normal hotel and end up having seemingly an unwanted guest. I've kind of experienced something similar, although it was not a haunting in the slightest. It ended up being an earthquake. But one time before I moved to LA, I was visiting and I was staying in a hotel, and in the middle of the night I woke up and everything in my room was shaking. Like the lamp was shaking, the dresser drawers were like opening and closing and slamming shut. And in my like grogginess, because one thing about me is like sometimes when I wake up I'm like still like asleep and I have no idea what's going on. So in my grogginess, my most logical conclusion was not that like it's an earthquake, was that my hotel room was haunted and there's like a ghost shaking everything. And it freaked me out, but I was able to roll over and still go back to bed somehow. And then the next morning I find out that it was an earthquake, and it made me feel so much better though, because once I woke up, I was really scared to be in my room. And then I realized it was an earthquake and I was like, that's a lot more logical. But I did think my hotel room was haunted for a while, so I understand the fear of being in a new location and thinking that you're not alone. Our next story is by the user The Nickel Tree. She is from New Orleans, but she explains that back when her husband was in the military, he was reassigned and asked to move to Baltimore to be stationed near Fort McHenry. She said that she had some businesses and did not want to leave New Orleans, so he moved up there by himself. She explains that she would be up late a lot of nights working, so her husband would do the same and would be on the phone with her. He also was a skeptic, so he didn't really mind being up late in a haunted building. However, that probably changed after many different experiences he had there. One including where he explains that he was there late one night and he swears he heard chains dragging on the floor above him.
Here's a story no one asked me to tell, but I'm going to tell it anyway. Around 2003, my business was doing really well. Like that's when we were doing more than 300 weddings a year. My husband was still in the military. We had 6 kids at that point. And the military says to him, hey, we know you have less than 2 years left, but we are going to take you from New Orleans and move you to Baltimore. So I had this big business, so I'm like, I'm not going to Baltimore. So he moves up there and we get him an apartment. My husband, as I have said before, like he's not this big believer of, getting scared and that kind of thing. That's my department. And he moves up to Baltimore and he is stationed right next to Fort McHenry, which was the fort during the Civil War that had an underground tunnel that led to the hospital. So the fort, like let's say it's over here, and then they had like this hole they go down and they would drag like the injured bodies underneath this tunnel. And then the hospital now is where a Navy base is. So he gets there and he's telling me about the place. And he's like, I said, gosh, are you scared? He said, well, nobody wants to go and lock up at night where the tunnel is, because apparently like that's where dead bodies and stuff came. And I said, oh my gosh. He goes, I don't care, I'll go, it doesn't matter to me. So he started staying later and later, because here I am home kind of like, I was without him at home with all the kids and, working and getting all the homework done and that kind of thing. So he was like, look, if you have to stay up late working, I'm going to stay up late working. And so he would stay late when nobody's there. So this is before I visited, because it was even, different one after I visited. But he calls me one night and it's 10:30. And by this time he had gotten back to his apartment. So he calls me up and he says, Jill, I have to tell you something. And I'm like, yeah, I gotta tell you something too. These rotten kids are driving me crazy. So he goes, no, seriously, like, I'm scared. I was like, oh, okay, like, what happened? He says, I was locking up and I heard something. I said, well, what did you hear? He says, well, I heard something dragging. Like, we're supposed to go on all the floors. And he goes, and I got up to the 3rd floor, and he says, and I heard something dragging up above me, like chains dragging across the floor. I said, okay, so what did you do? And he says, well, I started calling out, is somebody there? Okay, I wouldn't do that, but all right. And then he says, and then I started hearing stuff coming from the tunnel. Oh my gosh. So he doesn't lock up, except for the front door of the base. He hightails it out of there, comes and calls me. I said, Joey, this is an old Civil War hospital. They have spirits there, whether you like it or not. That is there. I don't ever want you staying late there again. So I go to visit him one weekend, and because of what happened to him, like, I don't want to go past the first floor. But there was this way to get to the roof. They had a ladder, and you would climb up this ladder, and then another ladder, and then you would get out to the roof. And he says, look, I want to tell you, he's not kidding, right? He's not trying to scare me. He says, when we're climbing this ladder, there is this whole part of the roof, kind of like this attic area. And he says, don't look right. Just don't look. And I said, why? What's there? And he goes, that's where everybody sees like the soldiers sitting. He says, don't look that way. So I'm like, please, I don't want to go up. I don't want to go up. And so we're going up, and, you know, I have that feeling like I have goosebumps, and I'm just so overwhelmed because the energy, there's no lights or anything. It's pitch black. The energy was just so heavy in that spot. And so we go up to the roof, and you can, you know, see out into the water. It's very beautiful. And so I'm like, he goes, I want to go look at that building too. And I said, oh, okay, well, what was that? Was that another part of the base? And he tells me, he goes, no, that's the morgue. I'm like, yeah, we're not going over to the morgue. So climbing down the ladder, and I could just feel that energy like right by my face. And I'm like, I'm not looking. I'm not looking. It was like a movie where they have something like right up to you, and you're like, and I couldn't close my eyes because it was this ladder. And boy, I just got out of there. He stayed there, stationed there for another year because, you know, surprise, surprise, you know, he gets to come home because our house, you know, got taken away by Katrina. So he got to come home after that, but that was a whole year and a half later. But that was, compared to New Orleans, man, right up there with what we have here in New Orleans. So it's not just here, although most of my stories are going to come from here because it is a pretty spirited city. But I just wanted to let you know, Baltimore, you have it too.
Honestly, this is such an interesting story to me. One of these days, I so badly want to go to both the East Coast and down south and just take tours of all these historic places that have, you know, obviously lots of historic tales, but ghost stories as well. I mean, to me, like, I can't get enough of like hearing about old historic buildings and the types of entities that they hold. So it is so interesting to me every time I hear someone talk about things like this. And honestly, I cannot believe that he would just like wander there by himself late at night. Like, I would be way too scared to do that. With that being said, she is also so brave for like going there to explore with just him too. But I think that would be such an interesting experience to kind of have access to that building outside of a tour. And I for sure would take that opportunity no matter how scared I was. Our next TikTok is by the user B Novax. And she has an experience with a mimic that's pretending to be her mom. She shares that her mom had left to go to church early, and all of a sudden she's hearing her mom's voice just outside her bedroom door. And she knows it is not her mom, because her mom has a key to her bedroom and would just use it if she really needed to get in.
Sacándome las cejas. Sí.
I have no idea what is up all of a sudden with all these mimic stories. I have never seen this many before in my life, so I don't know why there is such an uptake, and honestly, it's kind of frightening that there's so many all of a sudden. But I really hope she's like safe and everything, because I certainly would not have responded to that thing and had as much of a conversation with it as she did. Like, if you hear something like that, you absolutely do not interact ever. You keep it moving and pretend you heard nothing. I just think it is so frightening in the uptick of these stories that I have seen recently. And mimics in particular just really freak me out because you know that there is no good intentions behind them. Our next story is by the user TrulyTO. And we have yet another person who has a run-in with a vampire. He explains that a long time ago, during the times of MapQuest and printing out directions, which that'll be important in a second, he made friends with someone online, and they were both interested in supernatural stuff and kind of like spooky stuff. I mean, all fascinating. And they decided to hang out one day. So he goes online and prints out MapQuest instructions on how to get to this guy's house. When he gets there, he says it was like a mansion. Bunch of fancy cars in the driveway, and he goes in, and the guy says that his parents were not home for the weekend and they were just hanging out, just the two of them. So there was kind of like weird stuff in the house, and he can't really picture what this guy looks like anymore. It feels like a distant memory, and he cannot remember for the life of him what this guy actually looks like. But things got weirder. He went to the bathroom and he found a giant leather-bound book in the bathroom that had pictures and biographies about all these different types of creatures, as if it was like true. When he asked the guy what it was, he explained it, and they had a whole entire conversation about it, but Tio cannot remember any of it. He said it's like his memory is on mute. Eventually he leaves, and the next day he decides to bring someone over there with him because they were interested in the whole conversation. When they take the printed out MapQuest directions from the previous day to go to this house, they get there, and the house is not there. It is just an empty field.
Have y'all seen that story about that Uber or Lyft driver that met the vampire in New Orleans? That story made me think about a story that happened to me that was similar, but it was in Atlanta. But this happened a while ago. I was super young, and the details of the stories don't show y'all how long ago this was. This was in a time where it was just becoming cool to meet people online. Like, you would meet new people on MySpace and be like, oh, they live in the same area. Shoot, let's hang out, let's chill, whatever. This was also during the time where I was on this spiritual, like supernatural kind of awakening time. And everything on my page was talking about like spiritual, supernatural stuff and whatever. So naturally, I would have interesting conversations with people who were like into the same thing. This kid hit me up who was about the same age as me, I think maybe a little bit older, and was asking me, hey, did you read about this? Did you read about this? Have you heard about this? And all the stuff he was talking about, I was like, nah, I never heard of that. Wow, whoa, it's crazy. So we would always have these crazy conversations until we got to the point where he was like, you should come hang out. I got some stuff I could show you, like that I've done and that I've seen. You should come chill. I'm like, what? Yeah. This is about to put into perspective how long ago this was. So to get to his house, I had to print out directions on MapQuest, which was, the time I was living with my best friend who's like my brother, and I used his mom's car so I could go. I was like, hey, I'm gonna go hang out with a friend or whatever. She was like, cool, whatever. So I printed the directions out, drove to the house. I pull up to this house, and it is a mansion, like the biggest house I think I've ever seen. And as the gate is open, he's walking down the driveway. He's like, what's up? I'm like, what's up? What do your parents do? Just kind of like, oh yeah, they're into everything. They're not in town right now, whatever. When I tell you it was like a circle driveway, it had like Bentleys and like all kind of expensive cars in the driveway. And I'm just kind of like nervous because this is the first time that I've ever been around money like that. We walk into the house through this huge ass garage, and the house has this weird feeling. It like feels homey, but feels expansive at the same time, like a warehouse. It was the weirdest feeling. I can't really put my finger on it, but it felt vast and at the same time cozy. This is where it starts getting. As we go through the house, each room is themed to like a different period of humanity. I'm talking like big suits of armor in one room, and then it's like Asian inspired stuff and ancient stuff. And I'm like, so do your parents collect things? Or at this point, I'm like, what's happening in here? We're walking through all these rooms, and we finally get to a hallway that looks just like any other house, any other hallway. His room was to the right. There was a restroom to the straight ahead, and then branches off to the left to other rooms and stuff. Normal. This is where it kind of linked to the other girl's story. And what made me think about this again was I remember the details, but I don't remember the details. Like, I remember we talked about socials, birth certificates. He was telling me how to use my brother's birth certificate to get him out of jail. Other kind of secrets about the country, the world, all kind of stuff I remember, but don't remember. I remember what he looks like, but I can't quite remember what he looks like. I remember what he sounds like. I remember what the room looked like. I remember what the bathroom looked like. And let me tell y'all about what I found in that bathroom. So this is what made me start going on a rabbit hole and researching things, because it was this big book. It was a huge, I don't even think I've ever seen a book this big, but it was like leather bound. You could tell it was really old. When I opened the book, on the first page were like these drawings, and it was these beings, and it was kind of like a family tree type thing. And the first one was saying like, this is this being, and then this is this being's kids, and then this is whatever. These beings looked like us, but pitch black. And these were drawings in the beginning. So the beginning of the book was drawings. They were pitch black, like the color black. All you could see was eyes. I'm flipping through the pages, and I'm feeling like I'm invading privacy. I'm seeing something I'm not supposed to see. And as I'm flipping through the book, it's saying names of what these beings are, who they are, like description of who they are. It was like biographies, but very short descriptions. And I can't really remember details, but I do remember as the book got further, it became less of drawings and more of pictures. And once it started becoming pictures, I got scared. I grabbed the book and I take it out there, and I'm like, what is this? What is this?
What?
He goes, oh, that's the book of Anu, the Anunnaki. It shows you who all the Anunnaki are up to this day. Some of humanity comes from them. It's kind of like a story of God and the angels and blah, blah, blah. What? Mind you, we had a full-fledged conversation after that. I remember I was there for quite some time after that, and I remember him explaining it to me, going through the pages and talking, but I don't remember none of that. It's like I'm looking at a memory on mute. I came to it and I remember getting back into my car, and like immediately after I left, I called my brother while I was on the way, and I was like, you'll never believe this, blah, 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 because we were both on this supernatural spiritual journey. I'm like, he said this, da, da, da. My brother's like, I want to meet him too. I'm like, yeah, I think, yeah, you can meet him too. In like hours, I've been gone for, I don't even know how long, and I'm telling him more and more stuff about the stuff I remember, and he's like, I want to meet him. I'm like, bet, I got these directions I printed from MapQuest. Let's go tomorrow. I'm sure he's not gonna carry his parents out of town right now. This is where it gets all the way crazy. So the next day, we follow the directions that were printed on MapQuest back to that same place. We get there, it's an open field. Nothing's there.
I'm just picturing that, like, this kid's parents got home from their trip and found out that he had a human over and explained this book to a human and was furious and, like, somehow moved their entire house to a new location because they were, like, mad that he gave up their identity or something. Like, to me, I know that's, like, so illogical, but also to me that's the most logical explanation. Like, I can just picture, like, the supernatural parents being furious that their kid just, like, spilled all of their secrets while they were out of town. Like, honestly, that's what gets me, though, is, like, these stories where it's, like, there is irrefutable proof that, like, this or this happened because it's, like, printed out. It's not just, like, oh, like, I looked this location up on my phone and, like, you know, maybe your phone remembers it wrong or something. Like, it's printed out. Like, it's permanent, you know? So how does that just work? It's not like you accidentally typed in the wrong coordinates to get back to the house or something like that. Like, you had printed out directions that took you to the right place the day before and now they don't work. Like, that's not how printing out directions works. Like, it's going to take you to the same place every time. So I don't know, to me that I feel like is irrefutable proof that there's something weird going on. Like, not everyone is human. Again, I said this before and I know a lot of people will think this is crazy, but you cannot tell me that out of 8 billion people in the world, we're all humans. Like, there's got to be someone out there that's, like, supernatural, like whether it's a vampire or a werewolf or something. Like, you can't tell me that there is not a possibility of that. If there can be aliens out there, which has now been, you know, confirmed that there are aliens somewhere out there. If there's aliens, it's really not that far-fetched to think that someone could be like a vampire or something. I'm just saying. Our next TikTok is by the user Crime Queen, and she shares a story with us about a time her best friend had a haunted piano playing in the middle of the night. She says her and this girl were best friends, and she stayed over at her house one night, like she did frequently, but this night was a little bit different. She woke up in the middle of the night. She said it was pitch black. Her dad would make sure everyone had every single light off, which personally I cannot do, but she said it is pitch black, and she starts hearing a piano noise coming from downstairs. She tries to ignore it, but she realizes she needs to go to the bathroom. So she gets up and finds her way to the door and hears the piano again. But at this point, she realizes, like, she has to go, even though the bathroom is right next to the basement where this piano is located. So she goes to the bathroom, keeps hearing the piano, and then eventually manages to fall back to sleep. The next morning, she tells her friend, and her friend says that piano does not have batteries in it, so there's no way it could have been doing that. And because of this, she ended up losing her best friend.
Paranormal story time. If it's late at night for you, I would suggest you not watch this video. So to set the scene, this is the middle of winter when I was about 7 to 8 years old. And at this particular time in my life, I had a bestie, a ride or die best friend. We're gonna call her Lily. Me and her were together almost every single weekend. I'm talking about ride or die best friend until the end. You get my drift. And on this particular weekend, we had a sleepover, as we usually did. Her family had an electric piano in the basement. This basement was creepy. I'm talking about Basement from the Cabin in the Woods creepy. If you know the movie, then you know my reference. Cobwebs everywhere. You wouldn't have wanted to go down there. I'm one to always fall asleep before everybody during a sleepover. I always fall asleep early. I just cannot stay awake. I cannot hang. So I fall asleep before her. Mind you, she had a bunk bed. She would sleep on the top and I would sleep on the bottom. As I'm going to bed, I just don't feel good. In my soul, in my energy, this felt different. I didn't feel right. I felt very uncomfortable. The house was freezing cold and the house was dark. I mean, pitch black. You could not see your hand in front of your face. I'm so serious. Her dad was the type to where if it was bedtime and you were going to sleep, you had to turn off the TV. You had to turn off the lights. Everything had to go off. You weren't keeping a light on in this house. I wake up in the middle of the night. I don't know what time it is. It's dark. I'm having trouble going back to sleep. I'm tossing and turning. After about 45 minutes go by, I start to be able to doze back off. And no sooner do I start to fall asleep, I'm awakened by the sound of music. I don't know where the sound's coming from. It wasn't a TV. Nothing's on. There's not a light on in this house. I remember vividly I was laying on my stomach, so my back was exposed. And this is when I feel a rush of air go down my back, and it's cold air. I'm frozen with fear. But after a few minutes go by, I get the courage to try to wake up my friend. I call her name, there's no response. I call her name again, still nothing. After I call her name a third time, the music does stop. I have to get up. I'm trying to find my way to the door because it's dark. Like I said, you can't see anything. I finally reach the doorknob, and as I start to twist it, the music starts playing again. There's no turning back. I have to pee. I gotta go now. I run to the bathroom, and this bathroom is closer to the basement. And if you remember earlier, I said they had an electric piano down there. It was the piano. The piano is playing. I finish using the bathroom, and I run back to the bedroom. I get under the covers so fast, but that's not even the crazy part of the story. The next morning, I tell my friend about this piano playing. She goes, the old piano from the basement? I said, yes. She's like, there's no batteries in that piano. I actually, sadly, did not go back to her house after this. We actually stopped being friends. When I told her that I didn't want to go back over there, it kind of just put a bad taste in her mouth, I guess, but I know what I heard. The piano was playing.
I don't know, there's something about sleeping at other people's houses that is kind of unnerving to me to begin with, because it's not like your own bed, it's not your own home, like especially as a kid. Like this day and age, I would much prefer being in my own bed at all times just because I am such a homebody. But even back in the day, it didn't feel as like safe and comfortable sleeping at someone else's house. So that in itself is already kind of unnerving, but to feel kind of like vulnerable and scared because you're not at home, and then hear a piano playing in the middle of the night when no one is awake. On top of, like I said before, the darkness, if I had friends that on our first sleepover found out that it was pitch black in their room, I would not go back to their house anymore because I just can't do it. Never been able to do it. I am now 23 years old and I still sleep with night lights because I cannot be in the pitch black. Like, that is not an option for me. So, like, to me, I'm just, like, imagining the fear of, like, being in not a stranger's home, but, like, kind of an unfamiliar home. In the pitch black, you hear a piano playing in the middle of the night and you have to still make your way to the bathroom right near the ghost piano. And then your friend the next morning telling you that it's impossible and, like, doubting you. I don't know. Like, especially, though, if I had a friend that, like, was so uncomfortable with me being, like, scared of the ghost piano that they didn't want to be friends anymore, like, okay, good. Like, we should have been friends to begin with, I guess. Like, that's a ridiculous thing to stop being friends with someone for. Dude, I don't know. My family's had experiences with, like, this really, really old piano that we have in our family, like, being played when no one's playing it. So, I mean, I fully believe it. There's some pretty crazy things that happen in the spirit world, I guess. Our next two TikToks are by the user Christy Robinette, and she also has an experience with a vampire. I will say, I feel like there's a lot of vampire encounters recently, or at least vampire encounters that are being shared recently, so I don't know, I'm a big fan. But she shares a story about how she almost worked for a vampire. She applied for a job for this guy, and her mom, who is relatively psychic, had a really bad feeling about him. She was accepted for another job, so she was going back and forth, but decided to go with her mom's intuition and not accept the job from this guy, the vampire. After she says that she can't accept the offer, he keeps ramping up the amount of money and, like, pretty much, like, trying to convince her to come work there. She keeps saying no, and he keeps asking her and asking her. She eventually ends up taking the other job, and continuously, he keeps popping up in her life in ways that do not make sense. It's almost as if he is following her.
I'm seeing all these videos about vampires popping up on my TikTok For You page, and I never ever thought I would tell this story, at least in a public forum, but here goes. This is my vampire story. It still baffles my mind when I think that, say that, and I still get the creeps with the memory of any of this. And I'm going to be a little bit cryptic, if you get my drift, with regards to some of the experiences. But several decades ago, I had lost my job. I had just had my baby girl, so she's going to be 30 this year, so that's how long it's been. And I had gotten a job interview at a local business. Again, I'm not going to say what kind of business. And I went to this interview, and I immediately felt something odd with the owner of this business. There was something so mesmerizing about him. He wasn't good looking, but he was good looking. And it's hard to explain. Like, there was just something strange about him, and he just felt almost hypnotic. And he said, I'm interviewing for a couple more people, and I'll give you a call in a couple days and let you know if you get the job. Okay. I did get the job. A couple days later, he gave me a phone call and he said, I'm offering you this job at this pay. And it wasn't bad. The hours weren't bad. The pay wasn't bad. And I said, let me think about it. I had another offer on the table. And he said, please let me know by tomorrow. And I'm like, understood. So I had called my mom, and my mom was very intuitive, even though she didn't really want to admit that she was. And I told her, and I'm like, I got this job offer. And I didn't even tell her a lot of like the creepiness that this guy kind of gave me. And she's like, Christy, I have a really bad feeling. Do not accept this job. Do not accept the job. I'm telling you right now, something's not right. Do not accept this job. Now, this is a business that was in the person's family for a long time. And so it wasn't anything out of, it wasn't like a starter company. This person was kind of known in the community. My mom didn't know him. But so it was a substantial, real job. And I'm like, Mom, I don't understand. I need a job. She's like, you're going to get a job offer from that other place that you interviewed for. Just stick it out. Tell this guy no and accept the other job once it comes. And I'm like, this job was actually, it was pretty good. But I took my mom's advice and I called the gentleman the next day and I said, I'm so sorry. I am really honored, but I'm declining the job offer. And thank you very much for your time. And he's like, I will double your pay. Excuse me, sir? I will double your pay. Now, it already was good pay, but double the pay was a lot of pay. And I'm like, again, something felt really off. And I'm like, sir, I'm so sorry. I'm going to decline. And he's like, I'm going to check with you in a couple days. And there was just something very ominous about the way that he said that. And that night, I ended up having a dream with him in it. And it was very vampire-ish, is the only way that I can describe it. And the business that he was in also spoke volumes for that. So a couple days later, he called me. And I said, again, sir, I've accepted another job. And I did not tell him with whom. And he's like, I will triple your salary. And I'm like, I'm sorry, sir. And he said, I can tell that you are very psychic. And I can tell that you know who I am and what I am. And I think it would behoove you to take this job. What? So I told him again, no, thank you. And he said, okay. Now this was like, internet wasn't really a thing. Like you couldn't really look people up. There was AOL chat and such like that, but you couldn't really look people up like you can now. And so I ended up accepting a job at a cabinet store and as an office manager. And I didn't hear from him, but I was still having these weird nightmares with him in it. And I'm like, it's just got to be in my head, right? But it was almost like he could read my mind. It was very strange. Well, guess who showed up at the kitchen store the second day that I started? Yeah, this guy. And it's like he knew that I was going to be there. He's like, hi, Christy. And I'm like, excuse me, are you stalking me? Like, what are you doing here? And he's like, I'm ordering a new kitchen for the business. Like, it was nothing. And he continued to come in my dreams. About a year later, I ended up taking a job at a fireplace store as an office manager. A couple days into that, this gentleman walks in and says, I need a new fireplace for my business. Excuse me? Now, I'm not going to say everything about the business and everything about him, but you might be able to figure it out with a clue. And that is he lived above the business. That's all I'm going to say. So he's like, yep, I need a fireplace. And I'm like, sir, I don't understand why you're here. And he continued every time. He's like, would you like to work with me? I'm like, nope, I'm good. I'm good. I worked at the fireplace store for a couple of years, and he would every once in a while call and he would ask for the fireplace to be serviced. And I ended up telling my boss at the time, like, how I felt about him. And he would laugh and he's like, I'm going to send you out there with the tech. And I'm like, no, you're not. But he was like, yeah, something's strange about this person. Something is almost like immortal. Even if you look at the family lineage, it's like he's existed before. And it wasn't like his great-great-grandfather. It was like him. So I ended up quitting a couple of years after that, and I worked for a school district. And guess who showed up at the admin office? Him. And in the meantime, he's still coming in my dreams. And every once in a while, he's still calling me and asking me if I want a job. And no. My mom had passed away. I got a divorce. I mean, we are eons into this. And I ended up running into him at a store. And he, do you remember everybody you interviewed like one time? Because he either has a really crazy memory or it wasn't like a stalker. He just wasn't. That wasn't the case. It's just, again, it was very vampiristic. Is that a word? And so I ran into him and he's like, hi, Christy. And again, he's like, how are you doing? And it was just very kind of Norman Bates creepy. I ended up in the job that I'm in now. I'm a professional psychic medium. I ended up having to go to a competitor of his to work on a case. And we ended up talking about this gentleman and his business. And I didn't say anything, but the owner of this establishment went, just Christy, make sure you stay away from, because he's a vampire. And I didn't laugh, and she didn't laugh. And she knew I knew, and I knew she knew too. So vampires do exist, and they don't necessarily wear capes. Sometimes they wear business suits, and sometimes they invade your dreams. And I feel as if there's a possibility that my life at that time was a little bit crazy, and it was because of the psychic sort of like vampire energy that he was sending to me, because he was mad that I did not accept a job with him. I would love to tell you more, but I don't want to open up that can of bats. This is my vampire story part 2. If you haven't seen the first one, go back to it. It's a little long and I tried to shorten it, and I guess I'm not really good at doing that. So I apologize. I was off of socials for a couple days and I came back to all these comments and questions, and you guys are so cute. I love all of you, even the ones that think that I'm weird, because honestly, I think I'm weird too. And this whole experience was really weird. It really was. I got a lot of private messages asking me if I could tell them who this person was or what the business was, and absolutely not. I think it kind of gives power to it. And I'm even tiptoeing in some energy that I probably shouldn't be in, doing this story and even trying to be as vague as I can be. And only a handful of people know who this person is, and I've kept it. So, the other thing was I got a lot of, oh my gosh, did you think he was going to kill you? And it's done in a very sarcastic, tone. And I don't know what his end game was. It would be something that only he could answer. But no, I never felt like he was trying to take my blood or take my life or anything like that. I do wonder if there was a psychic energy that we shared, maybe a past life, because as much as he wasn't like good looking, he was hypnotic, and he was just, I can't explain it. There was just something about him familiar. There was something about him that made me feel some kind of way, but not in a romantic way. And it was just, there was like a soul attachment maybe. So maybe he wanted some of the psychic energy. I've always been a psychic medium. I've always seen dead people. And I didn't at that time disclose it to like anybody, but my family knew, my spouse at the time knew. But I knew that he knew that I was, and he sensed that, and maybe he was as well, and he wanted to train me. I'm not sure. So I don't think that he meant anything ill with the interaction. And obviously, he was very persistent for several years to make it known that he was a presence around me. Has he come in my dreams, or has he tried to find me in real life recently? No, it's probably been about 10 years now. So it was about 20 years, 15 to 20 years of him popping up in my real life. So that's a lot. But it was never done in a stalker way. It just wasn't. I was asked if he aged. No. And the interesting thing is I have seen photographs of his family, the business that he owns, his family owned, and there's either a grandfather or a great-grandfather that looks exactly like him. Almost as if they took his photograph and put it there. And yes, we can look very much like our relatives. I get that, but it's suspicious. And the other thing is I also had people in the same business that are very normal who kind of validated, exactly what was going on with it. Vampires are misunderstood. Let's say that. I used to have a podcast way back when, before podcasts were a thing. It actually wasn't cool back when I had a podcast. And I had interviewed people who were in the vampire community, specifically in Columbus, Ohio. And they gave more information about what vampires were, and they're more of an energy than like take your blood. Now, there are some that's what they do, but there's more that learn how to use and abuse energy and to sort of suck that energy. So at the time I had just had a child, and maybe that was enticing to him because I had that child. And honestly, maybe there is something ill about that, and he knew I had just had a child. So again, I'm not sure what his end game was. What blood type am I? A positive. Yeah. And what were some of the other questions? I'm trying to remember. I have never used his business. I will never use his business. My close, even my kids who are older now, I have told them don't use their business. Don't ever use their business for me, just because of my interaction. Do I regret not taking that job? A little. Maybe a little. My curiosity, piques every once in a while. My mom, who, like I said, was very intuitive. My mom was actually blind, but my mom was super intuitive. And when I tiptoed in the waters of possibly accepting the job because he offered me a lot of money, she flat out told me she would never talk to me if I took that job. Now, the other thing is the job was administrative. I was going to be an accountant and do some other administrative work. And I'm probably giving hint to what this business is a little bit, but there was some notice that I might have to be there at night alone in the dead of night alone sometimes. So we, I talked to my mom, I talked to my spouse at the time, and I had gotten another job offer that was not as great, but felt safer until he showed up to buy kitchen cabinets. So there was that. There was other crazy. Again, everyone was like, well, why couldn't you protect yourself? I was a baby. I was all of like 25 years old, I was about 25 years old. And I didn't know how to protect my energy. I didn't know how to protect myself even in sleep. I didn't know how to do that. So now I do. And maybe that is why I haven't had interactions with him or any dreams with him. So there was that. But that is my story. And it's a true story. It's a crazy story. I believe in you guys. Take care.
Okay, I think this is so fascinating. Again, like, there are so many people coming out with like vampire stories, and I feel like, come on, with all this like irrefutable proof, how can you not believe that they exist somewhere? But for me, it's like, it's constantly the like similar explanation of how these people look, and they're just so mesmerizing, and they have this trait about them. She has this experience as well. I do find it so freaky that it's like he keeps following her around. I will say I do overreact about things. I'm a bit paranoid, but I'd be freaked out if this guy keeps like showing up everywhere, especially because he's potentially not a normal human either. It's like a vampire. A vampire is stalking me. Like, that would be crazy. I want to know what his intention was, like why he wanted her to work there so bad. Again, assuming he is a vampire and not just like a weird creepy guy, like what's the goal here? Like, are vampires like how they're portrayed in movies where they like kill people, or are they like the ones from the Uber driver story where they're like energy vampires? I would love to know. All these times I'm like, I wish I knew like what these people's intentions were and what they actually were, and like I would love to know. If you're a vampire, please like let me know how that works. I promise I won't tell anyone. But another thing I think is so interesting is the fact that she said that he looks exactly like his great-grandfather, which obviously, like, duh, sometimes people look like their ancestors. But I just think it's like, considering the topic is vampires, I think it is just so ironic that it's like, imagine he's just like passing himself off as his great-grandfather because he's just been alive for that long. And then I wonder the logistics side of that with like Social Security and all of that stuff. Like, maybe that could be a good way to like find out if these people are vampires. Like, look into like Social Security fraud and stuff like that, and be like, oh, this person has 3 Social Security numbers over 300 years. Like, maybe if there's someone in the government that could help us like crack this clue about vampires. And because how do you just like, you keep getting like fake IDs to like pretend that you're younger than you are? I don't know. Like, that is another aspect of this that I constantly think about when this topic comes up. So I think this is just like another really interesting example of how we potentially may not be the only human-like creatures on this planet. Our next TikTok is by the user Jeff Perlman Author, and this is less of a paranormal TikTok and more of a true crime TikTok, but it is interesting nonetheless. This guy shares that back when his son was in preschool, there was another parent there who was known for making balloon animals. Years and years and years later, when he's talking about this now, he finds out that the balloon animal dad has been convicted of murder. Specifically, the murder of his wife. And he talks about going to prison to talk with this guy after not knowing him for years, like since his kid was in preschool, and getting the full story from him.
So I've seen some crazy shit in my career. Crazy shit. But I've had nothing like this podcast series I wound up doing for Audible maybe 5 years ago called Apartment 515 that nobody listened to, but they paid me a lot of money for. And it's a crazy story. So basically 13 years ago, my son Emmett was in a preschool program at the Jewish Community Center in Scarsdale, New York. And one day the teachers put on the door a sign that said, if any parents have any talents to share with the kids, list them here. So people would put like whatever, knitting and, tic-tac-toe, whatever. And there were 2 dads who showed up most days, me and this guy, Rod. And Rod wrote down balloon animals. Well, that's kind of interesting. He's a balloon animal guy. Well, one day shortly after that, another parent came up to me and said, you know the balloon animal guy? I was like, yes. She goes, I think he killed his wife. Like, what? She's like, yeah, I think he killed his wife. Go look up Rod Coughlin in newspapers. So I go home, I do a search, and it's this crazy ass story of this wealthy New York couple, Orthodox Jewish couple, Rod and Shelley Coughlin. And they met, they got married, they got divorced. They had this kind of bitter divorce. They lived across from each other in apartments in the same building so their kids could go back and forth. They had a son and a daughter. And basically, one day, the wife, Shelley, is found dead in a bathtub with her head cracked open. And there was a lot of debate whether this guy, Rod, killed her or if she fell. He maintained she fell. He came rushing in when his daughter called and she's dead. but it's sketchy. So anyway, the years pass, and I always have this in my head, Rod Covenant. He wound up getting arrested. They reopened the case, exhumed the body, found that she had a little broken bone in her neck that had to be broken with hands. It would have been broken from the fall. And he winds up in prison in upstate New York. I pitched his podcast series. I'm going all over interviewing people, family members, friends. He was a big backgammon player, people in the backgammon community. He had this horrible temper. People didn't trust him. They didn't like him, etc. The one guy I couldn't get was him, and he was in prison. So one day, myself and a producer named Kemi, we just figured we're going to drive to the prison. So he was my dog. So we drive to the prison in upstate New York, and we just show up. And you can, I know, dog. And you can just visit someone if they come to see you. So we walk in, and it asks, who are you? Jeff Perlman. What is your relation? It has to be friend or family. I put friend. So we're sitting in this waiting room, not knowing if Rod Covenant is going to come out to see us. He would only know me from 10 years earlier as another parent. We're waiting. Very nervous. You can't bring pens, you can't bring recorders, can't bring anything in with you. And all of a sudden we look up, and there's Rod Covenant. And he looks at me from about 50 feet away, and this is his look. Like utter confusion. And he walks up and he goes, who are you? He's wearing his prison clothes. And I go, my name's Jeff. I was a parent at the JCC. Your son was in my son's class. My son's Emmett. He goes, oh yeah, I remember Emmett. He's like, what are you doing here? And I'm like, well, I'm working on a podcast series about and he goes like this. And I was like, shit. And I go, wait. I just really want to understand your side because I'm trying to be fair. And he kind of perked up. And I couldn't bring in a pen. I couldn't bring anything. But there was this industrial toilet paper roll in the bathroom. And I took a ton of it. And there were pencils lying around, little pencils like you would use to fill out a DMV form. And he's talking. And he's like, none of this. He tells me a lot of stuff. He's like, this can't be on the record. I was like, fine. He told me a few things that he didn't say that couldn't be on the record. So I was like, but I sat there for probably 40 minutes talking to him. And the thing about journalism is you just want people to open up. Like if you give people a chance and you listen, they tend to talk. And he'd been in prison for a long time. I'm sure he'd been lonely. I'm sure he'd been frustrated. And he told me why he didn't do it. And he told me how he was innocent and how he loved his kids. He wouldn't do this to his kids. And he was not going to do it to the mother of his kids and blah, 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 blah. And we left and we were freaking giddy that we got this guy to talk. It was the most unlikely thing ever. We got this alleged murderer to talk. And he told me he was going to file an appeal and all this stuff. And I ultimately do the podcast, and Rod Covenant files an appeal. The appeal gets rejected, and he is now in prison for life. And that is a crazy story of the balloon animal dad for my kid's preschool.
Honestly, this guy was probably astonished when he saw him and realized who he was. Like, why are you here? But to me, like, this is just so scary and, like, crazy because you have no idea, like, who you're talking to on a daily basis. Like, obviously, he wasn't ever actually close with this guy, but it's like people in your life, you have no idea who they are or what they're going to do in the future. And also, like, it's just kind of like it's a humorous situation in the sense of, like, the balloon dad is the one who did this of, like, all the people. You really can't rule out anyone. Our next TikTok is from the user Jules Alexis, and she shares about her time randonauting. You know, randonauting is something that we do not talk about much these days anymore. It was big back in like 2019, 2020. But in her video, she says that she really does think that someone follows you around while you are randonauting. In this video, her and her friends are taken to the middle of kind of nowhere. And at first, when they get out of their car, it is nighttime and they can't really see anything going on around them until they hear a piercing scream off in the distance.
This is where we saw the owl last time.
This is where we saw the owl?
It always takes us here.
We always see owls around here, too.
It does always take us here. And the last time we saw it on the fence, remember?
Real.
I'm gonna roll the windows down.
Ready to walk. The next stop sign, turn right.
This one?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, this is Echo. It is right. Oh, of course. Dude, look how fucking dark it is down here.
An Echo.
Freak.
Bro, that's so nice.
Where's our point, AJ? I'm getting scared. There's more down there? Great.
An Echo, Jesus. Look how long this is.
Oh, hell no. It's dark.
It's all the way up.
Look, there's a little helicopter over there. You see the helicopter? Look, show me the helicopter. Oh, yeah. Literally a little helicopter over there.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
Oh,
yeah, that's a little.
We're at an airport now.
Stimson. Okay, now we take a right.
Maybe your brain.
Maybe. Take a sharp right turn. Okay, it's coming up.
I think this is
I feel like it's taking me in a circle, but it's not.
Yeah, I think it did take you in a circle, and this is the San Jose burial thing.
Okay,
It took us to the other way.
Oh, it's taking us inside. Show it the point. How far deep in there is it? It's right there in the back. Oh. Let's drive around and see if we can get in.
I don't think we can. They're all closed. That one's closed over there too.
Okay, where's our point by? Let's just see this real quick.
Right here.
Let's park right across from it. And just see and look in the gates and see if we can see anything. I know, but we're just going to do it real quick. Just to look at our point. Okay? Okay, wait. It's coming up. Okay, wait. Okay, so if I park it right here.
There's no cameras in my here, right?
Cemetery, there shouldn't be. Get off.
Yeah. That's just like.
Nope, go. Nope, absolutely not.
Honestly, this video like gave me chills. I'm so fascinated by Randonauting, and I really wish it would like make a comeback just so I can watch everyone else's adventures. I think personally I'd be too scared to do it myself. I watched one too many horror stories. I've listened to one too many true crime cases. I don't think I'd put myself in that situation. But I love watching other people doing it from the comfort of my own home. And to me, it's like, all the stories I see, like, it never really seems to be good. Like, it's always weird, creepy places. And I feel like it happens too often to be a coincidence. And I think this is just another perfect example. But again, let's bring back Randonauting so I can sit in bed and watch all of you guys find creepy things. Because honestly, that was a time. I really enjoyed it back in the day. Our next TikTok is by the user Dustin Lee Frazier, and I have showed his TikToks in a previous video. This is kind of a separate incident / also an update to previous TikToks combined into this one TikTok right here. I do want to focus more on the beginning of the TikTok than the second half with the update, because the update essentially is telling us about how he is thinking of getting a Ouija board to investigate and see if he could get answers on things that have been happening. The part that I want to focus on the most, the beginning of this video, he lives in Appalachia. He is getting gas, and it's kind of like a rural area for sure, like in the middle of nowhere it appears to be. He's getting gas, and across the street there's just a house. The house looks kind of abandoned, and he says that he swears he saw a person peeking from around the house while he's getting gas at night.
Color this summer with M&M's. Scan the QR code now for your chance to win.
I am here, like, I stopped for gas, right? And, like, the store's closed, and I was here, and I could have sworn I literally, like, saw somebody run around the backside of that house. Okay, well, they're in a van, so I'm not alone at least, but
I'm Tank Sinatra, and this is Tank's Good News. Subway has recently announced its new side kicks menu with foot-long cookies, churros, and pretzels, and they're available now.
hello? Okay, so what the fuck was that? There's like, it literally sounded like a marble. What the fuck? Like it sounded like a marble or something, like bounce. Oh, there's somebody here. Okay, anyways, the guy just wanted towels. I don't know. Like, anyways, so that kind of leads me into my next topic. I have been thinking a lot recently about, I had a Ouija board, bought it a few years back, and I thought about, and like me and my friends even played with it and stuff. I'll put in like a clip. I think I have some footage of it.
I don't think, I really don't. I think my hand is moving the board
like
too.
twitching
So
or something?
yeah, like I don't, because when it was moving, I feel like that was probably.
But we played with it and we had some like creepy stuff happen, and that's what made us like stop playing with it. I was thinking about trying to contact or try to talk to whatever this is that's attached to me. And so I need to find my Ouija board because I lost it. I have no idea where it is. So I thought about either just buying a new one or trying to find that one and trying to reach out and just like see what this thing wants or try to get answers and just kind of go from there. But I just wanted to update you guys about like what I've been thinking about doing. So hope y'all have a good Saturday. Bye.
Again, just mainly focusing on the beginning of this TikTok. Never a good idea. I feel like for as much as I've seen him posting paranormal activity on his TikTok, he should know by now that if you're in Appalachia and you think you saw something, no, you didn't. I was afraid for him as he like acknowledged this thing and acknowledged that something weird was going on. It made me concerned for him through the screen. Another thing I want to say is those ads at the gas pump were so loud, it was making me uncomfortable. Like, I feel like that was as equally as scary as him investigating whatever he thought he saw. I definitely want to do more of a deep dive into his account because it seems like there's a lot of really interesting paranormal content on here, and I might do a separate video or kind of maybe even do like a different video where I do like a few deep dives into like a few mini deep dives into accounts, because I feel like there are a lot of very similar accounts to his where it's something that definitely needs to be discussed a little bit more. But there's definitely something interesting going on here. Our next TikTok is by the user SparrowZess, and this is a follow-up to a previous video she posted where it was like a how I looked going into the Zack Bagan's museum versus how I looked going out of the Zack Bagan's museum. And her entire group looked like they had been through a lot. This TikTok I'm going to show you is her doing a follow-up to that TikTok and talking about her experience.
Okay, so here's my story time on the Haunted Museum. So I'm only going to be talking about my POV on the museum. I think that's only fair. And I'll be showing some things at the end. And of course, it was with their permission. So yeah. Any other questions you might have that doesn't include me, that's just what's going to happen because they just don't want to talk about it. So for the record, we were drained from the museum. And it was hot, but the feeling of feeling drained was completely from the building and our experience, not from the heat. But yeah, we were hot, but it wasn't that. So I did the RIP tour. It was my first time doing the RIP, and it was really, really cool. I definitely would do it again. 2 people in our group did not do the RIP experience, but the 4 of us did, and it was really interesting. So one of my biggest things that really threw me off about something I did was I went down to the basement, and I've always heard stories about how scary and how it has affected workers there, Zach, and even guests. But I was willing to go down there to experience it for myself. I was nervous and I was scared, but once I got down there, it was fine. Apparently we were down there for quite some time. There was 4 of us, me, a friend, and then 2 other people that were in the RIP, but we didn't know them, but they were part of the group. And it was fine. The energy wasn't heavy for me. Throughout the museum, the first time I ever went, the whole entire museum felt very heavy. Like it feels like you're carrying a backpack full of like rocks. But this time it didn't feel so heavy. I was just very tense. But down in the basement, it didn't feel heavy. And if you've ever been to the museum, you know what I'm talking about. It feels so strong, and it's weird. When we came back up the stairs to our group, the tour guide had asked us if we had heard anything or what our experience was like. And I had told them that I heard the spirit box say banana. And the other guest that was in there with us, she kept saying that it was so heavy. And I just looked around and I was like, it was fine. And a girl that was standing next to me kind of just like to me. I don't know. I didn't feel it as heavy. I didn't think it was as intense as it was to others, but I can see how it can be. So here's where it gets weird for me. So where I think I got affected was when I went into the conjuring room. So I've been into that room before, and I am aware of the devil's rocking chair. I have read about it, even out of the museum, and I have seen the film, which is not even close to what really happened, but you know, it's fine. But I was aware of it and its curse / energy. When it was explained to us, we were able to go up to the rocking chair. It's still behind a glass, I guess, and since we were RIP, we were able to do that. And there was also another, like, what's the word? Piece of furniture that had a peephole in it, and you can open it, and it was tape. I'm assuming it was the original tape of the recordings of the possession and the exorcism that happened. So that's the part where I got, I guess, dizzy / lightheaded as I was turning the corner going out the room. We ended up having to stand outside and behind some rope listening to the story of another doll. I believe her name was Lily. She was known for being a prankster / mischievous. I remember that, but I also remember my right leg, getting a little achy. After that, they guided us to our next room that happens to have pieces of, I believe, the Titanic. I don't remember. I didn't hear what was happening, but we went into that room and there was a replica of Robert the doll. And I got so excited to see that I kind of like booked it towards him. And I stood right in front of it. I couldn't stop looking at it. I was staring right into it. I knew it was a replica. And for some reason, I was so fascinated by it that I wanted to hold it. Like, I wanted to grab it and hold it like a little baby. And I wanted just to, like, oh my goodness. Like, I don't know why. And all I remember is just like staring at it. I kept turning around, trying to listen, but then I remember just kind of like getting lightheaded, and apparently I just kept turning around and looking at this doll. My friend caught it and was trying to like snap me out of it, but I just kept ignoring it and just staring at it, trying to just grab it. We ended up walking out, and I remember our next room was the demon house. While I was in the room, I started getting like my eyes really like burning, kind of like when you go underwater swimming and your eyes just start to hurt. That's how I felt. So I kept rubbing my eyes because I knew like they were like kind of burning. So that's when we go into the room of the demon house, and they have us stand there and it's gonna start, and my eyes hurt, my head just gets so much pressure, and I just bolt out the door. I run out because I just felt so much pressure on me. There was nobody outside the door besides one tour guide, and she ran up to me and was like, are you okay? Are you okay? And I was like, yeah, I just feel very lightheaded. And she was like, have a seat, sit down, get yourself together, everything's okay. And my friend ran out. What the heck? I don't know what happened. That was weird. My phone just glitched and it just flipped the camera. Anyways, so my friend comes out and he's checking up on me, and I'm just like, I don't know what's going on. Like, I don't remember really what I said to him, but I remember she kept saying, it's a replica, because he had mentioned that I kept staring at this doll. And I was like, I know it's a replica, I know it is, but I don't know why I kept being stuck on it. And then when I got into the demon house, I just like flushed out, my head started hurting, I was just weirded out. So the tour was over, and then as I'm walking out, I'm passing Lily, I just get tripped. I feel like a little brick, I don't know, like something small, like if I ran into it, like if, I don't know, a foot. The best way I could describe it was like a little foot, and I trip, and I turn around and my niece is behind me. She's watching it, how it happened, because it happened to her too. And I just kind of was like, I'm freaking getting out of here. Even to the point where I'm running out, they're still like messing with me. So on my way out, Lily tripped me and I was drained. I had so much pressure on my head that it went away really quickly when I walked out. But it definitely was draining. And the pressure in my head, I just couldn't handle it. I had to sit down. I was just like, I have to get the heck out of here. I didn't finish the tour because I didn't finish the demon house, but I think I did pretty good. I just put my card down towards the end, and something was in there messing with me, and it was intense. And yeah, if you haven't gone, I recommend it. I think it's a very cool experience to see all the things that they have in there. You just have to be careful and, You know, things can trip you, things can show up, things can scare you, things can, I don't know, but it's a really good time. If you don't want to go, that's okay too. You do not have to, but it was a really cool time for me, and I would go again.
This place, let me tell you, I have been there. I went there for my 21st birthday. It was like on my bucket list for years, and I'm so glad I went, and I do actually really want to go back. But let me tell you, that place is no joke. Like, when she is sharing all these things, I'm like, I can feel how I felt in each of these individual rooms, and it is crazy. I recently filmed a TikTok. I haven't posted it yet, but I filmed a TikTok telling about my experience, and it was a wild experience, to say the least. What I find interesting is how she felt okay in the basement, because I also felt okay in the basement. Up until that point, I was a complete mess. I was nauseous. I felt sick. I kept thinking that I wanted to bail and leave. I felt like the floor was like rippling underneath my feet, and as soon as I walked into the basement, it was like a breath of fresh air. Mind you, this is like a satanic haunted basement where they've done rituals. It's like, it's not a good place to be. But yet, to me, it was like a breath of fresh air, and my symptoms went away. So it is really interesting to me, because a lot of my friends had a hard time down there and I felt fine, that there's another person saying that she also felt fine down there. And it just makes me wonder why some people have horrible reactions and some people feel perfectly fine, when it is, in general, just such a bad place to be. I'm also interested in the fact that she spoke specifically about the rocking chair room and the demon house stair room, because those were also rooms that I had experiences in. I do think that those rooms are pretty heavy in general due to the items that they both hold, but it is really interesting to me how similar, in a sense, her experience was to mine. And I do want to focus on something that was different. I don't recall seeing a Robert the Doll lookalike, so maybe that just wasn't there when I was there. But I do think it is so fascinating that she was so entranced by this doll, considering it was not the original. So it makes me honestly wonder, like, and I say this very carefully, like, I'm not accusing or anything, but it makes me wonder, like, does Zack or people who bring these artifacts into the museum, do they add something to them? Because if it is a lookalike, is it just because it's a lookalike so it carries some energy because of the original? Or do we think that maybe someone's, like, putting something in this doll to have a spooky effect? So, I don't know. I'm not saying that that's what happens, but it also could just be, like, all of the energies in the museum mixing, and someone's excited that there's a new host for them to take a hold of. So that could also be a possibility, but I just really think it is interesting that she is so fascinated and affected by this lookalike doll, when in reality, like, there shouldn't really be any effect on her, because again, it's not the real thing. So that part just really kind of makes me wonder. Our next TikTok is by the user Morg's Hauntings. She explains that she lives in the Appalachian Mountains, and she goes up to her family's farm, also in the Appalachian Mountains, to watch the sunset and watch the moonrise. As she is out there, she sees a four-legged creature, tan in color, dash by. And she says this thing was absolutely not human, and it was not a mountain lion either.
So yesterday I made a video talking about how things have really just went from 0 to 100 in the paranormal world lately. I am experiencing things consistently, and the fact that I live in the Appalachian Mountains has made it so much worse, I think. Because the things that are normally just chilling in the woods are now very here. They are making themselves known. I am hearing things that I shouldn't. I am seeing things that I shouldn't. And something happened the other night that I didn't really plan on sharing, but so many of you guys are telling me that you're experiencing a lot, so I was like, you know what? Let's share it. So here's what happened to me the other night that I was outside. So on the solstice, I went up to my family's farm because I wanted to watch the sunset and I wanted to watch the moon rise because it was a really pretty moon. And I get up there and I'm like, I'm gonna go live because I bet a lot of other people would like to see this as well because it was a really pretty view. That didn't go well. There's not much signal up there. I tried my best, but you know, it was real glitchy. But in doing this, I was outside, surrounded by woods in the Appalachian Mountains, trying to see the moon. So I was in, the way the farm is set up, there is a barn, there's a road, and then there's another field where there's hay, it's hayfield. So we were in the freshly mowed hayfield watching this. So I remember turning because the moonrise is right behind the barn. And I was filming this before. I haven't looked to see if I got it on camera. I'm too scared to go look at the live. Don't even know if it, you know, you could see it anyways because it was so glitchy. But I was filming. I turned to the barn to film at the moon and I see something run across in front of the barn. I didn't get a good glimpse of it, so I can't give you exact details because of how fast it was moving. But here's what I saw. I saw something that had to be at least 5 feet tall because of the way it was proportioned. It was running right beside of the barn, and just judging by what I know about it, it had to be 5 feet tall on all fours. It had no tail or anything. It was tan colored, pretty like lean, I guess, and it was moving very fast. It was very long, probably at least 7 to 8 feet long. So like 5 feet tall, 7 to 8 feet long. I can judge that because of the way it was at the barn. Like I can just use guesses. It was definitely that size. I don't think it saw me notice it, and I was really careful to watch what I did after that. But before this happened, we did have a few warning signs that something could pop up. We heard a lot of whistling, a lot of mumbling. The air just kind of felt strange, and the field was full of deer, and right before this happened, the deer did all leave. So when I saw it, I was careful to keep my heart rate calm. I pretended I didn't see it. I turned and stared at the moon and just minded my business. And that is a big reason that I tell you guys the stuff in the Appalachian Mountains, like the rules, if you will, and things like that, because that could have ended really badly if I didn't know what to do. But I did. I did know what to do. And pretending you didn't see anything and checking your heart rate, making sure it doesn't spike, really does help. So, if you're ever outside at night in the Appalachian Mountains and you see a smooth-skinned, tan, very long and tall, animal-esque creature run by you, pretend you didn't. You did not see that. I know someone's going to be like, that was definitely a mountain lion. It was not. It was not. I've seen mountain lions. That was not a mountain lion. That was unlike any animal I have ever seen. And I grew up on that farm. So do it that way you will.
I really don't think I'd be cut out for living in the Appalachian Mountains. As fascinated as I am by all the lore, and part of me like wants to visit, I'm also terrified at the same time, because as she says, like keeping your heart rate down, I am so bad at that. Like coming from a person who like randomly panics at things and has my heart like beat out on my chest, I think I need a lot more like nervous system regulation practice before I can set foot in the Appalachian Mountains, because my heart would be beating like crazy and that thing would for sure find me. I also I applaud the like avoiding the instinct to like run away, because then it's gonna know that you saw it. And I think what she mentions about how she shares this so other people know what to do, I think that is really great and important, because if it weren't for these TikToks, I would know nothing about the Appalachian Mountains and or safety in the Appalachian Mountains. So just as a little reminder, I've certainly already said it in this video before, but if you saw something, no you didn't. If you hear something, no you didn't. The rule of thumb, mind your own business, like pretend nothing happened. Our next TikTok is by the user Dimey Dime. She tells us about the time that she went on a tour at the Whaley House in San Diego. She says that while they are on this tour, there is a loud bang, and they all jump and wonder what it is, which is important to remember for later. She then volunteers to go into a room by herself, and while she is spending time there, she snaps a few pictures. After the tour is over and they have time to ask questions, they ask, like, what was that bang? Was that you guys? And the tour guide admits that sometimes they do make noises to scare the guests, but that was not them. She then goes on to check the photos she took earlier when she was by herself, and she finds an interesting reflection in the window.
So let me tell you guys about my experience at the Whaley House. It is America's most haunted house. My wife surprised me with a trip there last September actually. And so we go to the town, Old San Diego, which is super, super creepy at night. The house itself was built in the 1800s. It's seen a lot. It's been a lot. It was the family's store, courthouse. It was a bunch of stuff. So we are on this tour and we're going through the house. Like I said, everything's like original. It's a museum, so they kept it up and everything. And the lady's telling us everything about the house. We're in this one particular room, the group of us, and she's telling us about the house, and then there's a giant boom. There's a boom, like the floor shakes. At least where we are, the floor shakes. So we scream or whatever, and then she's like, who's brave? And for whatever reason, I raised my hand. I was like, me. And she's like, okay, so go into the next room alone, and then the group will meet you. So I go into the next room, which is this room here. It's like a dining room, but there's like these windows that open up to a kitchen type of area. So I'm in there alone for a little while, maybe like 5 to 10 seconds before the group comes with me. And I start snapping pictures, just randomly snapping pictures while I'm in there alone. I don't review anything until later on. So after the tour is over, nothing else really happened, but we're outside and she's talking about one of the many deaths that happened on the property, but one that happened outside. So the tour is over and it's an opportunity for us to ask questions and stuff to the tour guide. So we were like, what was that bang? Like, I know you guys probably throw in some stuff to scare people, but she was like, that wasn't me. She was like, usually you're right, sometimes we do throw in stuff, but that wasn't me. So me and my wife were looking at each other like, okay. So the night continues. We stay in the town and we are sitting on the steps of this hotel, which is also presumably haunted. And I was like, oh yeah, my pictures. So I start reviewing the pictures that I took at the Whaley House, and I come across this one. right? So this, I'm gonna step out here. This is that room that I was in alone. If you can see around the edge, that's a window that opens up into a kitchen. But what's crazy about this picture to me and others that I've shown is this right here. I don't know if you could tell what it is or what you see. I know what I see and I know what others that I've shown see. I'm interested to know what you guys see, but it did feel super, super creepy in that area for the small time that I was in there. I think the door closed behind me, so I was legit in there alone when I took these pictures, but nothing or no one was there. I want to know what you guys see. I'm gonna tell you what I see. Actually, I'm gonna just tell you what I see. I see, and what others see, is a man, head right there, in a suit with a white shirt under and a black tie. You can tell me if that's what you see, but that's the head's right there, shoulders, tie, neck, and then it kind of just loses its bottom. So it's kind of like a floating torso, if you will. But I did take another picture in this area, not from the exact same angle, but nothing's there. So yeah, I want to go back. I want to do some more investigating of the entire town, actually. But yeah, that's my little story of the Whaley House.
I love when people share photos of the ghosts that they've caught on camera. That is like one of my favorite things, is when people share these stories and they tell about how they took pictures and then they show the pictures with like apparitions in them. Literally one of my favorite things. I just like can't get enough of like seeing these pictures, especially when it's like it just affects one photo. It's like, how can you really deny that proof? Another thing I do find interesting though is the fact that they admitted that they do sometimes like make noises to scare people. I guess it doesn't really matter because it's not necessarily like a real investigation or anything, but for me, I like, if I go to a haunted place, I want, like, if there's activity, I want it to be authentic, not like, oh my god, like, I'm so scared. I feel like maybe it's probably different for multiple people, and I feel like some people would like the scare factor, but I feel like if I'm going to a place like that, it's more for like learning about it and hoping I have a real experience. Like, I don't really want to walk away thinking I had a real experience when it was just like someone working there making a noise. So I don't love that, but I guess if anything, the fact that they admit that sometimes they do that makes it more irrefutable that whatever noise that they heard was real. Because in theory, if they're admitting it, but it wasn't them this time, then probably accurate, you'd think. Either way, I think the photo is really, really cool. Our next TikTok is by the user Nikita Legacy. In the beginning of this TikTok, she starts by prefacing that she is about to show us a clip taken from a recent live stream where she believes she caught paranormal activity on camera. She's at the gym and she is live streaming in the locker room, and all of a sudden you can see up in the top corner a kind of weird smoky mist appears out of nowhere. And she immediately reacts to it and is wondering what it is.
So the footage you're about to see is literally me at the gym. I was on live doing my makeup, and this happened today, by the way. You're gonna see in the next footage that there's like this transparent like light, or I don't know what it was. To me, I don't know if it came out of me because I laughed so hard. I don't know. Like, if you really look at the video, you know what I mean. Like, when I laughed, when I went like that, it popped like out, or like it went like that, and then it started getting on the screen at the corner top, like just doing, I don't know, weird angles and stuff. And I don't know, to me it looks like maybe an angel wings, and then it flies, it turns and it flies off into the light. Or this thing came out of me, I don't know. But when I saw it in that moment, I did feel peace. So I do believe in God. I'm not super religious, but I do believe in God. I do believe, you know, there's a heaven and hell, and I've been baptized. So I don't know if this was like something spiritual, paranormal, I don't know. But comment down below if anybody on TikTok is very spiritual and knows what this is, or if you have seen this before or whatever. Please comment down below, because this, I'm not gonna say I'm scared, but this is making me very anxious to find out what it is. I don't know what it is, but I hope I'm just trying to explain myself really quick, because it was just a fun live, me and my mom talking about movie ticket prices, you know. So then that happened, you know. So I'm gonna shut up, watch the video.
When you buy your own ticket, you can put that you're a kid, or you can do senior citizen. Do y'all see that?
What was that?
Did you see that?
Yeah, what was that?
Did you see that? Am I tripping? What the fuck was that? Did y'all see that or no? Or did I only see that?
I saw it.
But I wonder if they saw it from their end or that was just me. What was that? What was that?
It was like white smoke, huh?
No, there's no
Like-
smoke here. Maybe
like-
if I went like that.
No, it was like a
That was
like a white
yeah, something passed by.
like a white fluorescent or something.
What was that? Maybe because I went like this. I don't know.
Honestly, I really like I always like want to believe people whenever they like post stuff and like say that something happened. I like it does appear out of nowhere. Like that's the thing that gets me. It's like it appears out of nowhere. Like to me it looks like someone's like it's like vape smoke. But the thing is it's not like it gently like blows in or anything, like someone's like doing it off to the side. It kind of just like appears, which then to me I'm like, is it a filter that just appears? I don't really know. I want to believe that it's real, but it's just like, I don't know, something about it looks so weird. If it is real, it's like, it's very interesting evidence for sure, because like, what is it? It kind of doesn't really feel authentic. But again, on the other hand, it just like, it appears, like it just pops up. So I don't really know how to explain this. Really, the only thing I think is like, honestly, like it looks like it could potentially be like a filter. Or honestly, oh, I guess if she's live streaming, I mean, I don't really watch live streams at all. But I know like with the gifts and how sometimes they like pop up on the screen, like with that little cowboy hat thing. Is there one where there's like smoke in the corner of your screen? I feel like that'd be a weird like gift to have, but that also is a possibility that could explain why it just like popped up randomly. I don't want to believe it, but like I want to believe it because I don't want to not believe her, you know? Our next TikTok is by the user Evil Herbivore. She starts off this TikTok by explaining to us that she was home alone one night with the dogs while her husband was out playing bingo. A little after 9, the dogs start making a commotion in the way that they do when her husband arrives home. She says there's a specific way that they act when he arrives home, when they hear the garage door opening, and this is how they were acting. So she assumes that her husband has gotten back home. She opens the door to let them downstairs, and normally he walks in, greets the dogs, and comes right up to the room to say hi to her. But he doesn't do that. So she goes to investigate for herself and realizes that her husband isn't home. So she has no idea what her dogs were reacting to. After she realizes that it was a false alarm, she goes back upstairs and the dogs start to settle down, and it happens again. After this happens, and she again realizes he's not home after letting the dogs go downstairs, she hears in what she describes as his voice, but a little off. She hears him, supposedly, calling one of the dogs, which is also weird because it's not typically the dog that he would call. She then gets in contact with him and finds out that he is still 10 minutes away from being home.
Something really weird and scary happened to me last night, and I don't even know what to think of it, but I'm just going to tell you. My husband left to go play bingo, so I was just in our bedroom watching a TV show. All of the dogs were scattered on the bed and on the floor, and I was just kind of waiting for him to get home. It was around 9:30-ish when the dogs started like freaking out, acting like he was home. There's like a specific way my dogs act whenever they hear the garage door open, and that's how they were acting. So I initially was like, okay, so he's home. And whenever that happens, he usually comes like straight from the garage to the bedroom to let the dogs out and say hi to me. Well, I was sitting there waiting and the dogs are still freaking out, and I'm like, okay, is he not gonna come to the door? I'm thinking like maybe his friend is still with him, maybe they're chatting, I don't know. I eventually get up and I just let the dogs go, and I just lay back down. After a while, I'm noticing the dogs are still freaking out, and I'm still not hearing my husband moving around or talking or anything. I decided to just go out into the living room area and see if he's here. I look around, nobody's home, all the lights are still off. So then I started thinking, okay, maybe he got here and he's like chatting with his friend on the driveway or something. So I call him, he doesn't answer. Then I just go ahead and see if his vehicle is here. It's not. I'm thinking, okay, that was weird, but maybe like the dogs heard something across the street or whatever. So I just gather them all up and I go back to our bedroom with all of the dogs in tow. Maybe 10 minutes after all of that happened, the dogs had finally like settled down a little bit. They start freaking out again. They start acting like he's home, barking and whining and wanting to go back out to the living room to greet him. I'm thinking, okay, I'm just going to sit here and wait because now for sure he's got to be home. Again, I'm waiting and he doesn't come to the door. So I get up again and I'm kind of like, what the hell is going on? I open the door, the dogs like run out of the bedroom and they're barking and they're all excited and they go straight to the garage door. Nobody's there. Again, the same thing happened again. I gather them all up, go back into the room, and as soon as I close the door and I'm laying back down, I hear in my husband's voice, it sounded like my husband, but like a little bit off. He goes, Paisley, which is my dog's name. And multiple things are weird about that. He never does that. He'll never like yell for the dogs knowing that the door is closed. And he definitely like wouldn't yell for Paisley of all of our dogs. Like, she's our oldest dog. Like, usually our youngest dogs get like the most excited to see him. So if he was going to yell one of the dogs' names, it would be Rue or Penny or Cricket or whatever. So I'm thinking like, okay, maybe he had like a few drinks or something. I get up and I'm like peeking out the door. Nobody is there. Nobody is there again. And I'm like, I know I heard that. I for sure heard his voice yell specifically our dog's name. So he finally calls me back and he's like, hey babe, just letting you know that I'm on my way home. And I'm like, so you haven't been at the house at all? You're like not in the driveway? He's like, no, I still have like 10 more minutes till I get home. And so then I tell him everything that just happened and he was like, that is so weird. Like, so I don't know what that is. I don't know what that could have been, but I'm not crazy. Well, I'm a little, but not that kind of crazy. Honestly, like, I know I'm like laughing and kind of being jokey about it, but last night I was terrified. And I'm very skeptical of stuff like that, and I usually have like this ability to kind of like maintain control, rationalize certain things, but the fact that I heard it loud and clear and the dogs were reacting to it, it's just, I don't know how to explain that.
Like I said before, I think like the increase in mimic content is really, really scary to me, and the fact that like dogs are such like smart creatures, the fact that they heard a noise that they in their minds knew was like their dad getting home, but it wasn't, like, it's kind of hard to trick them on things that like they know so well like that. But the fact that it happened twice and then hearing his voice right before getting confirmation that he is not anywhere near home and it couldn't have been him, I honestly, like, I don't even know how you feel like safe and not scared in your house after that happens. Our next TikTok is by the user Allie Chase World. Allie explains that she is in the Appalachian Mountains with her friend and they decide to go looking for this supposedly haunted cave. While they're up in the mountains, so close to getting to the cave, Allie starts hearing what sounds like 2 footsteps of another person somewhere nearby. Person, maybe not person, who knows. They pause to take a break and she hears what sounds like 2 feet circling around them. She then alerts her friend that she thinks that someone is watching them. And her friend grabs their blanket and books it out of there. Allie, knowing that this is like the worst thing you could possibly be doing, chases after her because what else is she supposed to do? She says that this thing follows them all the way back home. They make it out of the woods into her mom's backyard, where the dog is growling into the woods. Later that night, her uncle, who lives next door to her and her mom, says that he was outside by the side of the house and something charged at him from the woods. Something on 2 feet charged at him and chased him all the way back inside the house. And she believes it is the exact same thing that was stalking them in the woods.
I was born, raised, and still live in the Appalachian Mountains. One time about 10 years ago, something chased me out of the woods, and I'm still not really sure what it was. I've told this story on here before, but I think the video got removed or something, so I figured I should tell it again. I grew up on about 100 acres of land here in Appalachia. So we have the farmland and 3 mountains. I know every inch of the property like the back of my hand. I've been roaming in those hills alone for as long as I can remember. So if you walk to the top of the cliff top on the mountain behind my mom's house, it opens up to this beautiful view of the valley below. It's like one of the best views in the entire county. In total, it takes like 2 hours to walk there. There used to be some old log trails that made it pretty easy to walk up, but those are pretty much gone, so now it's just like straight up mountain, straight up. And there are some caves up there, but I've never been brave enough to go in them myself. My aunt said the last time she went up there, she heard chanting coming from the cave, so that intrigues me. Her telling me that did not steer me away. For privacy reasons, I'm not going to be using my friend's real name, so we'll call her Jenny. It was a beautiful fall day, the weather was perfect, and we decided we wanted to hike up to the cliff. So on the way up, everything was fine. So we get to the bottom of like the cliff facing where we'd have to go around to get to the top so we could see the view, and I started getting like this incredibly uneasy feeling. I didn't tell Jenny that I was scared or anything, I just told her that we should probably sit down and take a break. At this point, all we had to do was climb up the back of the cliff and we would have been there, but I had this overwhelming gut feeling telling me that we needed to stop. So that's what we did. I tried to play it cool. We laid down a blanket. I was burning a smudge stick. And I'm one of those people that don't really talk much when I'm in the woods. I'm just kind of taking everything in and listening to my surroundings. So that's what I was doing, just listening. And to the left, pretty far away, I heard footsteps, which immediately put me on alert. At this point, I still don't think Jenny even knew that anything was happening. But then I heard this thing, whatever it was, walk behind us. It was walking really slow, but whatever it was on 2 feet, and I could tell that it was really big. It was really heavy. I could hear its big feet crunching in the leaves. And it only had 2 feet. It was only taking 2 steps at a time, and eventually I heard it on the right side of us. So at this point, I realized this thing was circling us. It was stalking us. It knew we were there. We couldn't see it, but it could definitely see us. I told Jenny, like, hey, not to alarm you, but I think that there's something watching us, and we need to get the F out of here. What's Jenny do? She gets up, she grabs the blanket, and she takes off running. I'm in shock at this point because I know you're not supposed to run, but Jenny's a city girl. She doesn't know you're not supposed to run. I heard the footsteps of whatever it was start to get quicker too. It was still pretty far away, but it was picking up pace. I'm a pretty fast runner, and I knew that Jenny wasn't familiar at all with my family's property or just being in the woods in general. Like I said, she was a city girl. So I caught up with her, just as this thing was catching up with us. I've never ran so fast in my entire life, the whole time being chased. We heard the loud footsteps running behind us, but we didn't dare turn around and look. So we finally make it out of the wood line to my mom's house, and then my mom's dog starts barking and growling at the woods for hours. Like, he doesn't stop. Like, he just does it all evening long. My aunt and uncle live right next to my mom, and later that night my uncle said he was outside messing with something on the side of his house. It was completely pitch black dark outside. You know, there's no street lights out here or anything. It's just dark. Remember, we're in rural Appalachia. So as he's turning the water off on the side of his house, something huge ran at him on 2 feet from out of the woods. He couldn't see it, but he could hear it, and it ran him all the way into his house. It had to be the same thing that chased us out of the woods and my mom's dog was raising hell at.
Literally what I was saying earlier about what that other TikToker said about how I guess these Appalachian TikToks are really important for knowledge on what to do when you're out there, because running absolutely was not the right decision. I mean, granted, I say that as someone, like, I might act on an impulse and do it anyway, even though I know it's not a smart thing to do, because that is just such a frightening situation to be in that, like, you know you're in danger and you have to pretend you're not and then slowly get yourself out of the situation. Like, again, I don't think I'd ever be cut out to live in Appalachia. I really want to visit, but I need to, like, work on my self-control and fight or flight before I actually go there. And with the amount of stories I hear about these terrifying encounters in the Appalachian Mountains, I honestly it baffles me that people live there and this is just normal. I feel like it's probably less of a regular occurrence than it seems to be, because obviously people are only sharing the interesting stories, not the day-to-day. But it just it freaks me out too much. I'm so fascinated by it, but I don't want that to be my life. Our next TikTok is by the user Brooke So Basic. In this TikTok, she explains how her daughter, when she was younger, appeared to have past life memories. Her daughter starts asking her weird questions one day, asking where her mom is. And she explains, "I am your mom." And then her daughter says, "Oh no, she's dead." And then she goes on to say that she was alive in 1438. So she starts writing down all of this information this little girl is giving her, because she's realizing that this might be a past life memory.
What is one of the creepiest things a kid has ever said to you? I'll go first. When my daughter was almost 3 years old, she told me and my godmother a story. We were at my godmother's house and we were working on a Halloween/birthday costume for my daughter. We're taking her measurements and cutting fabric, and she randomly looks at us and she asks us where her mom is. I tell her, "You're being crazy. I'm your mama. What are you talking about?" Thought maybe she was confused because I call my mom, so maybe she's looking for her grandma. While I'm saying I'm your mama, she cuts me off and says, "Oh, she's dead." Me and my godmother are looking at each other like, what? My daughter told us, "My mom is unalive and I live with my aunt." And where's my aunt? I'm like, hold on, what are you talking about? She straight up tells us that she was alive in 1438. She's probably telling us some weird shit about a past life, so I start questioning her. She keeps making sounds that are like Thessaloniki, and she says that her name is Arthnasanya. I'm writing everything down because I'm like, this is freaking crazy and I don't want to forget it. Because she didn't speak very well, I don't know what the hell she was talking about. I tried to do research on the places and the names that she mentioned, but I couldn't find anything. So if there is a town called Thessaloniki or something in 1438, let me know. She told me her aunt was really mean to her and that her aunt ended up unaliving too. And that was it. She just stopped talking about it. And I kept trying to ask her more questions and she wouldn't say anything else. It was just she had this little brain moment that just sped off a whole bunch of random information and then it completely shut off after that. She's 9 now and she has no recollection of any of this.
I think the craziest thing about all these little past life things is just, you have to wonder how, these kids can't be making it up, because how do they know these things? Kids don't have free range on the internet. They can't most of them, I mean, depending on how old they are, they can't read. And even if they can read, it's you're not providing them with books necessarily that would give them this information. So where do they come up with these things if not from past memories? And I mean, I personally believe that the younger you are, the more susceptible you are to seeing spirits and just being more in tune with the spirit world and spirituality in general. So to me, it's not that far-fetched to think that a child might somehow be tapping into one of their previous past lives from decades before. But I still think if my child said something like that, I would be kind of caught off guard and freaked out a little bit. I'd probably look at them a little bit differently for a few days until it really sunk in for me. Our final TikTok is by the user Supernatural Sleuth. And he tells us about how there recently have been some Bigfoot sightings including Bigfoot entering a woman's home.
Apparently, Bigfoot is starting to come into people's houses in the Smoky Mountains. Now, this story is circulating on TikTok, and one of my followers actually submitted it and shared it with me, and you have to hear this one. This happened between Gatlinburg and Cherokee, North Carolina, on a farm that this family had recently purchased within the last few months. So this lady said she first noticed in the barn area one day while she was out in the barn a set of huge footprints leading from the barn like back into the forest and vice versa. She had no explanation what these things were. They were too big to be a human, but she just thought a big bear. It had to be a big bear. Fast forward a few days or weeks, I'm not sure. One day she and her daughter are home alone and they're up in the attic just doing some work. So as they're just doing some work upstairs in the attic, they both hear very heavy footsteps enter the house. Too heavy to be a human, and she immediately thinks this bear has gotten into her house. So she instinctively tells her daughter just to be very quiet, do not make a noise. We're in a bad spot here. If this bear, comes up the steps, we could be in bad trouble. So, as the attic door is still open, like to the downstairs, they both start kind of peeking around, trying to see downstairs because they can hear these footsteps. But to her surprise, it isn't a bear that walks into view. It's a ginormous Bigfoot. She said this thing was covered in reddish brown hair from head to toe. It was built like a man, a huge man, but it was a Bigfoot. Now, if that wasn't crazy enough, just after this huge Bigfoot stepped into their vision, field of sight, she said one that was about 4 feet tall, a smaller one, walked in also. And at this point, they are going into panic mode. She's trying to tell her daughter just to be quiet. They don't want to draw attention to themselves. And they both are witnessing these two Bigfoots walk through their house. And they're just kind of growling and grunting, making noises, walking around. After a few minutes, she said the biggest one walked back like toward the door like it was going to exit. Then right behind, the smaller one coming back, but it just happened to stop like right in their field of view. At this point, both she and her daughter were looking down at this thing, and the little one stopped, and she was just terrified that this thing was going to look up and see them looking back. But she said it stood there for a few moments just looking around, but it never did like make eye contact with them, and eventually it made its way out of the house too. They waited about 30 minutes or so, then she and her daughter, they just made a run for it. They didn't hear any other noises. She grabbed her car keys, they ran to the car, and they got out of there. She wasn't a believer in Bigfoot, at least not until this happened, and the guy who I heard this from said that she had took pictures. There was like muddy footprints on the porch, and she hadn't shared them with him yet, but she supposedly does have pictures of that. This is the first case I've heard of a Bigfoot going into a person's house. If you ever heard of anything like this, let me know in the comments. She said they'd only been there a few months and had no reason to have like trail cameras up, but they would probably put them up now. Who wouldn't? If you have any stories like this, any Bigfoot, Dogman, Mothman, ghost stories, my email is listed in my bio. I'd love to hear it. You guys have a great day. God bless.
I don't know why, but this, hearing this for some reason excites me so much because I used to be a huge fan of Bigfoot. I kind of forgot all about it for a while, but my brother and I used to have a Bigfoot club. The club location was his closet, and I think I managed to recruit 2 of my friends, and we'd sit in his tiny little closet and talk about Bigfoot. I've always been weird. This is nothing new. I've always been like this. And then my parents and I we used to watch a show called Finding Bigfoot. I'm pretty sure it's off the air these days, but at dinner time we'd watch a show called Finding Bigfoot where these were scientists, and they'd go out into forests and try to find Bigfoot. Honestly, I'm a big fan of that guy, and I kind of forgot that he existed in recent years, but if he's making an appearance and people are starting to see him again, that is good news. I would love for my feed to be filled up with Bigfoot content because, I don't know, I just I think he's real. Probably. The world's so big. Who knows, But I don't know, Bigfoot to me, honestly seems kind of like a cool dude. I really wish they would have had, their camera set up before this incident happened, because if it really was Bigfoot and not just, a bear and its cub, imagine having that evidence of Bigfoot entering your home and, a baby Bigfoot, too. I'm just, I'm picturing, how Great Danes, their puppies and, their feet are, massive. I'm picturing that, it's a baby Bigfoot where, their feet are, massive, even though they're, a teeny, little child Bigfoot. Just imagine a little clumsy Bigfoot. That would be adorable and hilarious. I feel like adorable is probably not the right word for Bigfoot, but like, I don't know what to tell you. Anyway, I really hope Bigfoot comes back in style and we start talking about him a lot more, because I kind of miss that era of the world when people would talk about Bigfoot all the time. But anyway, that is the final TikTok of our video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know which one was your favorite, and if you stumble across any terrifying TikToks you'd like me to include in a future video, feel free to tag me. My links are all down below. And if you did like this video, please be sure to give it a big thumbs up. I'm going to pop up a couple suggested videos right here for you. And please click the subscribe button down below or right here and turn on post notifications so you never miss a video. I post every Sunday and sometimes Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Again, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next week. Bye.